It is February 10th, and there have already been 2 cases this month where I had to build web scrapers. The first was an AI recipe app that required scraping thousands, if not tens of thousands, of recipe pages. The second was for a client that wanted an automated, entirely hands-off newsletter creation process that required scraping multiple sources. And throughout both of those processes, it taught me something pretty valuable. Picking the right scraping tool can make or break your project. Because let's face it, every coder or low coder at some point in their journey is faced with the prospect of having to scrape data from somewhere. And it's not always a super straightforward process. You've got static pages, you've got dynamic pages, you've got local scraping, you've got headless browser scraping, tons of different options out there that fit different use cases. So which use case is best for you? Whether you're building an AI training data set, automating content creation or aggregation, or trying to handle dynamic JavaScript heavy websites, each scraping tool is going to have its own sweet spot where it excels and painful edge cases that suck to deal with. From point and click solutions that require zero coding to really powerful and extensible frameworks that can handle millions of pages, by the end of this video, you should know exactly which tool is going to be right for your project. And the best part is that we have tested this extensively in production environments so that you don't have to waste time with tools that do not work. So in this video, again, we're going to go through my top 5 tools and specific use cases that I find they really excel at. So there's going to be, like I said, 5 tools that we are going to take a look at in this video. The first is going to be a basic HTTP request. Then we're going to move on to a tool that I have done a previous video on that I really like called Exa AI. From there, we're going to move on to one of the crowd favorites, Crawl for AI. Then we're going to go to what is quickly becoming my favorite of these AI-enabled web scrapers, Firecrawl. And then last but not least, we're going to go to another crowd favorite, Browserless. And so we're going to go into where they excel, where they kind of break down, and what their relative pricing looks like so that you should be able to make an informed decision as to which of these is going to work best for you. And so the way that we're going to do this is we're going to take 5 different sites from 5 different categories, and we are going to run them through each of these nodes to see what type of output we get and where certain ones break. So the first up on the list is going to be a basic static site, right? So when we think in the context of building a scraper, you have static sites and you have dynamic sites. Static sites, in my experience, tend to be a little bit easier to scrape because you just have the content sitting there on the page. We can go through, we can just download the content and read it. And so the first thing that we're going to do, again, is we're going to start with a basic dynamic site, which is going to be Anthropic's article on building effective agents. Really good article, by the way, that you should give a read through if you are in the realm of wanting to build AI agents. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to our N8N environment. We're going to go through to our first basic HTTP node. We're going to hit test step. And boom, we can see a giant HTML page return to us, or HTML. And so we can see in here, it is scraping the contents of the page. So we can see who wrote it. We can see like actual content on this page. So this is our first method of scraping. Again, basic HTTP request. The one downside, if that's what you want to call it, is really not a huge step that you need to put in here, is that you would want to parse out this data. So obviously, if we have this big blob of HTML coming back to us, we'd want to parse that out. And so you would need to then extend your workflow, whether it's in N8N, a no or low code tool, or if you were building this in like Python or JavaScript and we're trying to parse out your data, you would want to use a parsing library to help you make sense of all of that information. The next one that we have, again, one of my favorite tools, Exa.ai. And so the way we configure this tool is pretty straightforward. So we're making this post request to api.exa.ai/contents. If you want to take a look at the site, go to exa.ai. They have really good documentation. Their pricing is pretty good. So for 1,000 requests, it's like $5. Yeah, $5 for 1,000 requests. I've been using this tool a lot and I haven't even spent that much on it. And they have a really great API dashboard where you can come in here, you can do a post or make some sort of search and then come through here and take a curl off of it. And so we're specifically using their get contents endpoint. Okay, so this is the exact URL that we had inside of our N8N instance. And then there's a few different variables that we pass in. Again, if you want to use this in N8N specifically, you can just copy this request and you can come over here and you can import curl and it will populate all of this for you. And so we're asking it to go pull this Anthropic article. We hit test step and it is executing and it's going to come back. And now it has returned for us all of the text on that page, which is pretty awesome. Now, one of the reasons that I really like Exa.ai specifically is that there's more you can do to extend this. And so you can tell it that you want a live crawl. So some crawlers use cached versions of their pages. This will pull a live version of the page. You can say, do you want the full page text? Do you want a summary of the page text? Do you want the HTML tags or not? You can also limit the number of characters it returns for you. So for example, if you're going to pass this into an LLM, you don't want to just randomly pass huge chunks of text because it could fail if you're maxing out your tokens. You can tell it, hey, I want an AI summary and give it a custom prompt on how it summarizes that information and a few other things as well, like scraping through different subpages, pulling internal and external links out, things like that. So I really like this tool as a scraper, really awesome, and it seemed to pass that test. Now, Crawl for AI. So Crawl for AI is one that has become pretty popular lately. You can run this locally on your computer if you head over to the GitHub repository, which I will pull up here in a second, right here. So if you wanted to run this again locally or deploy it yourself, you can come through here and just install this onto your computer. But if you want an approach that doesn't require you to do that, where you can use it with a deployed version of a tool like N8N, and you can come into DigitalOcean and you can just download essentially that repository. And I will have a separate video showing you how to do that because it is a little bit more involved. But basically, after we have done that, we have it deployed and we can make requests to this endpoint. Okay, we can make a request to this endpoint. And so let's look at that over here. If we go into our Crawl for AI node, right? So we're making a request to that DigitalOcean container or the Docker container saying crawl. And then we're passing it our URL, which in this case would be right here. And we're going to say go crawl that page. Now what this does is it's going to return us a task ID. And so we need to wait for that job to finish. So this already has a little bit of a step in between where you're going to need to poll for responses. So we can come back here. And now that we have it, we can say, hey, go pull me that task ID. So if we have this go run now, it should go and pull that Anthropic article and boom, we can see that it has done it. And as we start to scroll down through here, again, we can start to see that it is successfully scraping that page. So Crawl for AI, basic HTTP request, and Exa all working so far. Now we have this tool Firecrawl, which I did say was becoming one of my favorite tools. So we're going to come in here, we're going to paste that same article, test step, and bam, it goes out and pulls it. Now, if you want to use Firecrawl, you can simply go to firecrawl.dev and sign up for an account, and they immediately plop you in with your API key already configured, and you're ready to rock. If you go over to the playground, you can use a few different endpoints. So they have single URL scrapes, which is what we're using right now, just to say, hey, give me the contents of that URL back. They have crawls, so if you want to actually crawl a URL and all of the subpages on it, which would be a little bit more of an advanced use case, you can crawl. You can map, where it's going to attempt to build a sitemap of this website. And then you can use this extract option, which is going to extract structured data from your web page. But what you can do is you can come through here and you can say get code, and then it's going to come through and it's going to pop out different code options. So whether you want to run this in Python, Node.js, or just a curl request like we are doing, it's going to give you that code to use. And then we can pop back over here and make a request, which is what we just did. And so we're just providing the access tokens in the header, and then we are giving it the JSON for the request. So we're saying the URL is this URL, and this is the format that I want it returned in. Now again, you could just go through and go to get code, copy that curl request like that, and then you could just paste it in over here. You say import curl and just paste it in, and this is all going to work for you straight out of the box. So that is working. That is working. And then last but not least, we have browserless, where they give us this URL. So if we were to go over into our browserless instance, again, you can come over here, just sign up for an account. It's going to give you a bunch of free credits and a token that's already made. Then you go into docs, API reference, and then from inside of here, you come up to browserless as a service and go to V2. And then you're going to have all of the different endpoints in here with documentation on exactly how to call them. So pretty cool. And again, we're calling this scrape endpoint right now. So production.browserless.io/scrape. I'm going to cancel this token. And then we can, again, put our URL in here, which is right here. Pop that in, let it go. Now, the difference with this tool is that it wants you to say what the selector is that you're trying to grab. And so you pass in this elements array, and then we're saying, hey, I want you to grab me all of the paragraph tags, for example. And so it's going through and it's pulling every single paragraph tag out of this document. So when it comes to like a basic static site, like our Anthropic article, all of these pass pretty easily. So that being said, let us move on to test number 2, which is going to be a Medium article. Now I'm going to pause real quick and run through these. All right, so we just ran this through for each of these. So let's pop in and see what type of response we're getting. So Medium with just a main or a standard HTTP request. Seems like there's a lot of gibberish in here. I don't know if this is just like the CSS classes that are being automatically generated, but it is scraping the page for us. So that is a check mark for basic HTTP. When we run exa.ai through, again, entire article gets returned. So that is a pass. When we ran crawl for AI through, so again, this one has a little bit of an extra step where we need to wait and poll. I'm putting this wait function in here. You would want to have an actual polling function in there to say, hey, is it done yet? Is it done yet? Is it done yet? Looks like it did, in fact, successfully pull the contents through on this one as well. Fire crawl. Successful. Browserless. So browserless returned us verifying you are a human. Okay, so that would be a big old, for out of the box solutions that just work kind of well, it's a big old fail for browserless. So that being said, let us move on to the next one, which is going to be Neil Patel blog article. So I'm going to run this again first through our basic HTTP, and we can see they are rejecting the request. So Neil Patel's website is saying we have to enable JavaScript to continue. So it clearly has some sort of code on there that's blocking just HTTP requests alone into the site to get the content back. So that is a big old X for basic HTTP. When we start talking about what I would call like a website that doesn't want you to scrape it is what Neil Patel stuff is. For anyone that doesn't know who he is, he's like a big digital marketer, and people try to take his content a lot. And so it's not surprising to me that he's trying to block that as a scraper. And so that's why I have that in here. Now, if we were to run this through exa.ai, Neil Patel, random blog post. Same thing. So we're having trouble finding contents. So they are blocking exa as well. If we were to go crawl for AI. Okay, crawl for AI. You can see a lot of challenge error type content on here. Yep, so it's also getting blocked by some sort of CAPTCHA. Fire crawl. Okay, So Firecrawl was the first one that was actually able to scrape this this web page, which is pretty cool. So that's a check in that column. And then last but not least, if we go over to browserless, I'm not expecting that this one is going to pass, to be honest, because it failed the other one, which every other one passed. And boom, trying to verify that we are human. All right, so now we're going to move on to a completely different realm that we haven't tested any of these on. So we've now tested each of these 5 in the context of kind of like basic content sites, but I wanted to really test this out with a e-commerce style site. And so I decided to just see if it would be able to scrape Amazon. And so let's see what we've got going on here. So we're going to come through and we're going to do the basic HTTP request. Which seems to be returning. Again, so okay, so it is actually returning. That's surprising. I was thinking Amazon would block this type of thing, but apparently not. So let's just go through all of these and see. Okay. It's interesting. So exa.ai straight out of the gate is actually giving us a pretty nice little structured return of the data on that one. Crawl for AI. Let's see what Crawl for AI did. So Crawl for AI seemed to have been blocked. Okay, Firecrawl. Yep, Firecrawl seemed to have worked. And then again, browserless. Okay, worked on browserless. So Amazon doesn't seem to care as much as the vibe I'm picking up on. If someone is scraping. So we're going to go to a CNN website because CNN is a dynamic, like content is generated dynamically. And so basic HTTP request seems to work fine. I'm going to go into Exa now. Works fine. Crawl for AI is still processing, so we'll have to run that again and see if it's done yet. Still processing. Still processing, really. Okay, seems to be really wanting to process that. So we're going to move on to Firecrawl. Pulled everything fine. It looks like we're having a lot of trouble with browserless not wanting to return any paragraph tags or span tags or anything out of theirs. So a few things I want to note here as we move through. So I think there's 2 primary categories really that you have here. You have the first category, which is tools that are going to work for you without much configuration on your behalf. So when we looked at a tool like exa.ai, for example, or Firecrawl, those 2 tools worked really well out of the box, okay? We didn't have to really do much of anything, and they worked in most of the use cases. I think exa.ai, there was only one of those where it didn't work, which was the Neil Patel article. Firecrawl worked on all of them. So the reason that I say that is I don't think it's fair to look at a tool like Crawl for AI or a tool like Browserless and say, hey, it doesn't work. Because the fact of the matter is, if we were to break these into categories, these two tools over here, Browserless and Crawl for AI, these are going to be tools that are, sorry, let me get my screen a little better. If we look at tools like Browserless and Crawl for AI, these are tools that are very developer friendly, right? They're not meant to just really even probably be run. Like Browserless, I would imagine, probably isn't really built necessarily to be run as a SaaS. If we go and look at like the documentation for it, for example, yes, it can be used as a SaaS, and we are doing some pretty basic stuff. There's obviously more advanced things that you can do. But I think if we were using this with the proper JavaScript or Python or even Java bindings and really starting to customize the types of things that we sent through in the request, it probably would have performed a lot better, right? Particularly when it comes to passing through some of those like CAPTCHA tests and security protocols and things like that. I'm sure it would have performed much better. Same thing with Crawl for AI. So Crawl for AI has a huge community behind it. I know a lot of people use it. It's open source. And again, there's a lot more stuff that you can do if you're talking about like deploying and configuring this yourself in order to make sure that you're not getting caught up with those different like CAPTCHAs and things of that nature. So those are things that if you have the capability, those types of tools might be able to take you further in the long term. But if we're talking about a simple solution that works to scrape content or data out of the box fairly easily, I think it's very clear that Firecrawl and Exa, which aren't even necessarily in the same category, I would say they are the best two solutions. So that's it for this video, guys. If you have any specific tools or you like this type of content specifically, it is actually very helpful to let me know in the comments. My channel's in its beginning stages. So if you want to see more stuff like this, comparing tools, that's something that I can start doing more of. If you want to see more like actual coding tutorials and tools like with Python and JavaScript and actually like deploying those things, that's something we can do. If you want to see more no code or low code solutions and tools like N8N, I'm happy to record those types of videos as well. But if you don't let me know, then I have no idea. So please let me know in the comments on the video, and I will try my best to start taking those comments into account and recording videos around that stuff. So that is it. I will see you in the next video.